The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
There'll be spectacle, there'll be fantasy, there'll be daring do and stuff like you would never see.
Be a movie, yeah, we're gonna be a movie,
Starring everybody
and me. There'll be heroes bold, there'll be comedy, and a lot of fuss that ends for us real happily. Be a movie, we can watch it all develop, starring everybody
and me. We'll take the world and set it on its ear.
Come on, join in. We're gonna start right here.
And we are going to start right here. Hello and welcome to Triple Feature.
Right here.
A Radulich and Broadcasting
Right now.
Network premiere podcast starring Maximus
Everybody.
Interruptus. Otherwise, first, I am your host, your mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich, and my partner in cinematic crime, Maximus Interruptus. Let me tell you about this fella. He is the terror that flaps in the night, the switch that derails your train, the soap scum that lines your bathtub, the weirdo who sits next to you on the bus, the slug that slimes your begonias, the gum that sticks to your shoe. He is the peanut butter that sticks to the roof of your mouth, the chill that runs up your spine, the hairball that clogs your drain, the smoke that smoked
That was my hairline. I'm not that.
He's the itch you cannot reach, the ingrown toenail on the foot of crime. He's the wrong number that wakes you at 3 a.m. He's the auditor that wants to look at your books. He's the batteries that are not included, the parking meter that expires while you shop. Ladies and gentlemen, he's the cloud that rains on your parade and the piece that doesn't quite fit. God damn it, pal, it's Robert Winfree. Yay!
Okay, I know at least half of those are Darkwing Duck.
They're all Darkwing Duck.
Okay.
I spent a minute. Thank you.
You can give yourself a round of applause for that one. It's okay.
Hang on. I legit spent a few minutes at work finding those. ChatGPT helped. ChatGPT did all the work.
And in another couple of years, it'll just be doing your job for you.
God, I hope.
And speaking of AI doing jobs for everyone, let's talk about these movies, shall we?
All right. Yes. Welcome to Triple Feature, everyone. Tonight's focus is on 3 of the 10 Best Picture nominees. These are the three of the 5 we haven't gotten to yet. We did good this year. Before they announced,
I had to mention.
Yeah.
You and I kind of went out of our way this over 2024 to okay, what's the stuff getting buzz? How we doing here?
Yeah.
What's going on with this? What's the skinny? And they put out the list, and we still hit personally less than half.
No. I know with you less than half. In total, movies that I saw and or reviewed were 5. They were Wicked, Anora,
which should not have been nominated. Let's be honest about that.
But we'll talk about that at the end of the month, the end of February.
Yeah.
Wicked, Anora, Amelia Perez, A Complete Unknown, and Dune Part 2. What we hadn't gotten to yet was Conclave. Oh, and I had seen The Brutalist by that point. Did I? Or I don't remember if I'd seen The Brutalist at that point.
By the time they announced the nominations, you had, yes.
Okay. We hadn't seen, nor had we reviewed Nickel Boys. We had not seen, nor we have reviewed Conclave. We had not seen, nor had we reviewed I'm Still Here. And then, we hadn't reviewed A Complete Unknown, and we hadn't reviewed The Brutalist. So I'm just trying to, get as many of these in so we don't spend the entire Oscar show like we did the first year we did this, doing full-on reviews for 5 movies, and then Alexis is like, shoot me. So this is the second of our 2-part pre-Oscar show shows where we can spend a little bit more time focusing on these Oscar news. And they are Conclave, as you can see in the graphic, Conclave, A Complete Unknown, and The Brutalist, which, unlike the last time we did this, we've seen all three of these now. So,
Indeed.
Let's not waste any time because we have a lot to talk about with all three of these. Let's get right into Conclave.
But Mark, we're talking about The Brutalist eventually. Wasting time is something it should be art. Right? We should imitate the art we're reviewing and just waste a boatload of my life.
Can you wait till we get to The Brutalist for you to complain, you bitchy person, you? All right,
Conclave. I could, but
oh my God, we're gonna have this kind of a night where it's just,
dude.
You refuse to work.
I will work. I have to. So you understand kind of why I'm a little bit like this?
Yeah. Why are you being a pain in my ass?
I watched The Brutalist today.
Yeah.
Okay. So one, insomnia has been kicking my butt for the last week and a half.
Okay, so that's part of why you're irritable. Got it.
So I went to bed at 3, 4 in the morning, which was actually better than the 5 to 6 it's been. Had to get up to, because this movie is at half an eternity long, which is still shorter than The Irishman, but still. I had to then get up in time to go see this movie before 1 p.m. Because anytime after 1 p.m. my time, I'm running too close to getting out of it and getting back here for the show starting. And if anything goes wrong, I'm going to be late. So wake up earlier than I want to. Go see this and just understand that this is going to be 6 hours out of my day between travel, movie, previews, and travel back home. This is it. This is all I did. I did that movie, got here, and now I'm doing this. That's it. That's been my Monday.
Yeah, I blocked out a half a day for this. I think I talked about it on the last show. I threw the girlfriend out of the car. I went about 40 minutes into Tampa to the Veterans AMC and proceeded to sit there for 4 hours with a pee break, and then drove back. And I think it was after that I went and got my kids. So. Because it was a
day. If you want to watch this movie in theaters, it's a commitment of basically your whole day.
And I think it's well worth it, but we'll get there. I swear to God, we're going to get there. Eventually, we're going to get there.
Yeah,
we have to get there. Anyway.
But Mark, I was told reliably by that movie that only the destination matters.
Conclave.
I'll yell about that later, too. Don't worry about it, guys.
God. Conclave is a 2024 political thriller directed by Edward Berger and written by Peter Straughan, based on the 2016 novel by Robert Harris. If you don't know who Edward Berger is, you should. He's prior
Why
to this,
should I, Mark?
Because he was another one that we reviewed. It was also nominated for a Best Picture, so he's got quite the record. He wrote, directed, and produced All Quiet on the Western Front, which was distributed by Netflix. He wrote and directed All My Lovin', All My Kissin'. You don't know, but Robert Winfree's been missing. Oh boy. Oh boy. And then he also
certain values of missing. But it's okay. I'll reload.
So yeah, that's that. And he is a German-born Austrian and Swiss director and screenwriter. Back to Conclave. It stars Ralph Fiennes of The Menu, Stanley Tucci of Transformers: Age of Extinction, John Lithgow.
Okay, what's your Lithgow poll? Go ahead.
John Lithgow of Footloose. Sergio Castellitto and Isabella Rossellini. In the film, Cardinal Thomas Lawrence organizes a conclave to elect the next pope, and finds himself investigating secrets and scandals about the major addresses. Conclave premiered at the 51st Telluride Film Festival on August 30th, 2024, was released in theaters in the U.S. by Focus Features, which is part of Universal, which is why you can now find this thing on Peacock. The film received positive reviews from critics and praise for the performances, directing, screenplay, and cinematography. Grossed around $82.4 million worldwide. It was named one of the top 10 films of 2024 by the National Board of Review and the American Film Institute. Among other accolades, it received 8 nominations, including Best Picture at the Oscars, 6 Golden Globes, winning Best Screenplay, and tied Wicked with the leading 11 nominations at the 30th Critics' Choice Award, including Best Picture. All right, Robert, in 50 words or less, so that we can actually get to talking about this and be done with this podcast before I have to go to work tomorrow. Tell me what happens in this wonderful movie.
I make no promises about the runtime tonight, Mark. We're going long. Broadway, baby.
My God, I'm a hostage.
Doesn't feel good, does it?
Shut up! Shut up!
So as the basic premise of Conclave again is the death of the Pope. So now all the cardinals must convene to elect the new Pope. This is how they do it. And naturally, there's conflict and politicking that arises. You have... Okay, if I editorialize too much, I'm going to get towards a point that I want to make later. So I'm going to try and be careful here. You start with You're welcome. You start with a couple of favorites to ascend to the papacy. You have the African from Nigeria, Adeyemi. You have John Lithgow as Tremblay. You have Stanley Tucci and his turtleneck, because you referenced that god-awful movie.
You have Stanley Tucci wasn't running around with a giant bomb, running around the Vatican.
Well, there is a bomb that goes off in this movie. It could have been his.
Yes. I so wanted Stanley Tucci just every time he's in a scene with Ralph Fiennes, he's just running back and forth. Like, they're having the same bit of dialogue, but he's got the bomb in his hand from Age of Extinction.
Please stop.
Yes, sir. You keep going. I'm going to amuse myself with this.
So, Stanley Tucci, another sort of, and the Italian Tedesco. And these are kind of the major forces at play. You have the African who is backwards, but, you know, a good guy. You have the corrupt Tremblay. You have the spineless Tucci. And you have the Trump stand-in in the Italian guy.
Right.
He does everything but say, let's make Catholicism great again. I was really pissed at that by the end of this, for the record.
It was weird that they had to make the Vatican great again hat that they gave him.
At least it was in the right color.
Yes. A lot of red in this movie.
So, complicating matters is the fact that Ray finds his character. Again, he's looking into a few of these things. He exposes corruption. He exposes that Adeyemi had a relationship. And that kind of means, yeah, we don't need that in the papacy.
He fathered a child with a nun
Yeah.
that he thought was never going to leave Nigeria. And because this is a very political movie and becoming Pope is a very political thing, somebody tries to do damage to his candidacy for Pope by bringing her there so she can telenovela style go, but we had a child out of wedlock. You can't be Pope. I is Mia. Except that she's Nigerian.
Yeah. That was about as racially sensitive as everything else in this movie, including making the Italian the racist.
Keep going.
Whoever wrote this agreed with the assessment that was given by Guy Pearce's character in The Brutalist of the Italians. I will not repeat what he said, but...
Okay.
But again, this is slightly complicated by Lawrence, Ray Fiennes' character, giving the homily at the beginning of the conclave and kind of turning a few heads of some of the stuff he says. And a few people starting to kind of get behind, like, you know what? He's actually kind of looking out for the church here. Maybe he is the right guy to become Pope. And there's also a previously unknown cardinal, Benitez, if memory serves, who was made a cardinal in secret by the late Pope and given the Archdiocese of Kabul, Afghanistan. Which I think was the Pope trying to kill him. That would make more sense.
Sure.
And this, soft-spoken Mexican fellow who is clearly our Jesus stand-in, because this is what we're doing here. And things actually start going Lawrence's way. The more people drop out. Stanley Tucci, character is Aldo Bellini. He can't really gain traction. He has all the liberal votes, but he can't gain traction outside of that because subtlety is not a thing. And he's only concerned with stopping the evil Italian Trump. Sorry, I shouldn't. I'll save it for later. But again, things start going Lawrence's way. Few of the others start dropping out for the aforementioned reasons, and the fact that he's kind of been steering everything and doing a decent job of guiding what's going on. He's presented as a very, he doesn't want the papacy. He's a unambitious figure by and large in a room full of very ambitious figures, and everyone kind of comes to the conclusion that, you know what, all things considered, he might be the best choice. And then right as he votes for himself, divine intervention happens in the form of Muslim suicide bombers in the Vatican. Can't stress enough how unlikely this is, because the Vatican is a profoundly secure, independent nation in the middle of Rome.
You'd have better luck suicide bombing the White House.
Probably.
Yeah.
But it happens, and in the aftermath of this terrorist attack, Tedesco gets up and gives his fiery "we have to make Catholicism great again" speech, and then Benitez goes, "But you know nothing of war. I have served my ministry in the Congo in the aftermath of civil war, and in Afghanistan, where if everyone actually knew that I was either Mexican or Catholic or both, they would kill me. And really, you've got to do better, Cardinals. You've got to step up."
And then he flaps his wings and flies away.
As a craft issue, the speech that Benitez gives at the end is better than Falcon's at the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, only because the writer has a slightly better handle on prose, not because it's actually better in substance.
We're almost there.
But this pointless promo, vague and only moderately optimistic, is enough to sway the College of Cardinals to vote for this guy, who they met literally 3 days ago. And you think, okay, we got here. And then Lawrence is informed that this guy was, there'd been some questions about some of his health earlier, because you do a little background on all the people who rise to the rank of cardinal, because the church has a public relations wing. And something comes like, no, he was going for treatment at some Swiss clinic. And Lawrence goes to him and goes, "I need to know what this is about, buddy." And he goes, "Well, they were going to remove my uterus."
And Ralph finds his fucking jaw goes through the floor.
And so Benitez reveals that I am intersex.
Mind you, I don't know if you said it, but at this point, he's been elected Pope.
Yes, this is after his election.
He is the Pope. Smokestacks are going the whole 9 yards, and all of a sudden, Ralph Fiennes like, "So tell me about your uterus."
Yeah. So now the Catholic Church is going to fall apart in the aftermath of this, because that's what would in fact happen. Big schism.
The movie doesn't deal with that. They have a conversation. I will wrap this up for you. They have a conversation where basically he was like, "Yeah, I went to Switzerland because I was born intersex, and I didn't know I was intersex until well into my adulthood."
Yeah. Yeah, he finds out because he goes in to get his appendix out, and the doctor's like, "Oh, there's other things in here that are not really supposed to be there."
Yeah, if you've never heard the term intersex before, it was a big controversy during the Olympics about an intersex boxer who I believe was Turkish.
Yeah, and if you actually look at the culture, one of the reasons you can tell that that's actually a man is because of how everyone treats him. There's a bunch of stuff. Dude, the Turks don't play around with this stuff. If that's a woman and you're her coach, you don't hug her at all, ever.
Okay, well, I don't want to get into the specifics of that, but she was claiming, and there's every article I read about this, because it was a huge deal, especially around some people I knew, She had been and always been fighting as a woman who was intersex. And intersex is you're born with, I believe, both your gender-oriented organs as well as the opposite organs.
So we used to have a perfectly good term for this, believe it or not, that was non-controversial until language shifted and everybody decided, well, to get where we are in the dumb culture, you used to be called a hermaphrodite. Because
now you're
that's
intersex.
and
So anyway,
well,
he's born before you put your foot in your mouth.
before
So
again, sort of before going further, born with both, and really, if you have someone born with both, you probably should remove, especially if you're like.
But his claim to Ralph Fiennes
reasons.
is he was perfectly willing to go ahead and do this, and he wasn't trying to fool anybody or put one past anybody. And yes, the previous pope knew of this. However, he got to the point of going under the knife and said, "You know what? God made me this way. There's even a Lady Gaga song about it. I'm going to stay this way, and it's fine. And if the Pope thought it was okay, then everybody else should too." And Ralph Fiennes kind of does Macaulay Culkin from Home Alone, and that's the end of the movie. All right, let me give Robert a chance to give his brain a rest. I like this movie for the most part. It's a nice talky drama with some, with a little bit of sleuthing, a little bit of whodunit. It kind of comes across as like a police procedural, and I like a good police procedural.
This is really better This is much better understood as a political thriller. I mean, that's what you listed it as. But I mean that in the truest sense. If this is you could swap out the setting of this being for the Pope and make it any, election for the head of state, and you'd get kind of the same thing.
Yeah, there's a lot for me. There was a lot of good stuff going on here in terms of the craft elements. I absolutely agree with its placement among Best Pictures for the performances. These are some of the best performances I've seen all year. Stanley Tucci's fucking amazing in this.
Stanley Tucci's good. Ralph Fiennes is tremendous. He absolutely earned that Best Oscar nomination. And frankly, having now seen The Brutalist, I do think my vote would be for Ralph Fiennes if I had one.
No, I disagree, but we'll get there, and it's okay for us to disagree. My point is the actual dramatic performances: Ralph Fiennes, Stanley Tucci, John Lithgow, the guy who plays Ediyama, all fantastic.
Isabella Rossellini got a Best Supporting Actress nomination out of her turn as the Mother Superior there.
I don't disagree with her inclusion. I don't think she should win it, but
I'm with you there. She's probably not going to win, but I'm fine with her being nominated.
It's a tight. Leaving out some of the thematic stuff, which we'll talk about separately, it's a tightly woven, tightly crafted, investigational procedural movie. It does somewhat deal with the politics of the Catholic Church, but but up until the very end, not in a way that I think is ham-fisted or overly preachy. I think there was a comment that our good buddy Pat made about, the movie kind of goes off a cliff at the end, which I think is its own separate conversation. But I think up to that point, it was on the track and pretty solid.
I completely, for the record, completely agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Everything until the ending of this, I was mostly on board with. I rolled my eyes a little bit when they elect Benitez. It's a little bit too.
Well, I do want to talk about this. It's not perfect. I don't think this should win Best Picture. The best things about it are costuming. I mean, they really did capture. I mean, it's hard to say that because normally you think of costuming, you think of something like Wicked, but I think there's room in this world for accurate costuming. Yeah. And this film should transport you into the setting in which it takes place. I felt like I was at the Vatican. This felt like a window into that alien world. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to give it, at least the nod for best costuming. I don't know how I feel about the cinematography of this. It felt a little flat to me.
The cinematography here is good. I have no problem with its inclusion amongst the nominees. I
didn't think it was anything special. So if you can figure out what was special about it, I'm willing to hear 50 words on it.
Well, it helps that they're framing real sets in this day and age.
Sure.
Like everything there is built. Everything there is clean and readable. There's some really nice there's some really nice shots of this is a testament to the cinematography. There's some really starkly impressive shots of just people walking. Like the art direction of it is still, it kind of jumps off.
Now that you say that, I would go with a nom for best set design. It won't win, but I would give it the nod.
Yeah, again, I would have gone, again, there's a handful on the production side that this deserves nominations. Again, I think you're right. It's probably going to come up short on most of them.
Issue with, go ahead, sir. Sorry.
Just another on the technical side. The score does a fair amount of heavy lifting in this, and I don't mean that as a negative. That's why films have score, but the score does a lot of work here, and that's to its credit that it carries the load effectively.
So, without necessarily dipping my toe into the thematic stuff, one of my problems with this movie is some of the structure of the plot. Anything having to do with, I believe it's Benitez, anything having to do with Benitez and the Muslim bombing feels like it's out of left field. Like we don't know how to move we don't know how to move the narrative forward, so we'll create an incident that again, if you're gonna do a suicide bombing, a conversation about there may be a suicide bombing happening here should have been somewhere in the narrative, and there isn't.
There's always.
I was watching it really early in the morning, and that happens, and I thought I was in a different movie.
Yeah, look, there's a degree to which it's just understood that there's always some like upheaval when a pope is elected.
Mm-hmm.
But we have an entire opening sequence wherein, again, Ralph Fiennes' character is the dean of the College of Cardinals. He actually occupies a fairly important position. He's not just a random cardinal. He should have been informed if there's like an increased threat level this time around. Like you can introduce that.
A conversation about it would have been nice, so that when it happens, we can say, "Good, we fired Chekhov's gun." Not,
But now we get divine.
Coming.
Now what we get is divine intervention in the form of the Islamic jihadists.
Yeah. The other thing is, like I said, I think if Benitez is the hero we need, not the one we deserve, that also should have been introduced earlier in the movie. It's not. The focus is on Ediyame. The focus is on Stanley Tucci's character. The focus is on John Lithgow, who is the villain of this thing. And then it just seems like, and out of left field comes Benitez. And I don't love that about.
With one mediocre speech.
Yeah.
And suddenly he is the one. It's stupid.
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite It's not like Mufasa's speech from Mufasa, the Lion King.
Again, because we're dealing with a better made movie with a writer who understands the prose better, but functionally it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the reason why I like this movie. I think it's worth a watch. It's on Peacock. Give your brain some culture and sit and watch it. It's going to cost you nothing if you have Peacock already. But it's not perfect, and I don't think it deserves to win Best Picture. So.
Win, no. Win, absolutely. Win, no. This would be about like fourth on my list overall, give or take.
Right. It got a win for, I think I read it got a win for like best screenplay at the Golden Globes. And if you're talking about like an adaptation of someone's novel, sure, I'll go along with that.
This might be again, because we're talking best adapted screenplay, so I'd have to look at what it's up against.
Mm-hmm.
But I could potentially get on board with that.
If you don't have anything else about The Craft, let's deal with this issue at the end of the movie where, again, all of the villains have been defeated. And, the saintly Benitez, the hero we need right now to lift up because a lot of what the movie deals with is, we understand the Catholic Church has taken some hits. It's got some egg on its face. And we want to restore the papacy to a place of honor and something, to ascend to. We want the Catholic Church to be something people take in their hearts and believe in and makes them better. And Benitez is the hero we need right now, only to find out that he's intersex. And then Ralph Fiennes nearly has a fucking heart attack about it. And then the movie ends. And I think for the audience's sake, and just so that we know we addressed it, because it really bothered Pat. It seemed to have bothered you in our group chat.
A little bit.
It did not bother Alexis, and it didn't bother me, though I saw the gravity of it, kind of.
Well,
Go ahead.
I don't mean this as an insult to anyone.
No, go say what you're going to say. I know where this is going.
You've been around enough religious people in good faith, and to understand their perspective, even if you don't agree with it.
Right.
If the sum total of your world look is an atheistic one, or a unmoved mover agnostic one, which is basically atheism, but you get to feel a little bit better about yourselves. I will argue that point to the death, by the way.
Great. Get your own podcast and do it.
I have my own podcast. It's just not appropriate there, and it's more appropriate here. Anyway, to anyone who is not religious, who doesn't understand the full gravity of what happens, or if you're like passively, I go to church for Easter and Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
If you're one of those people, and bless you, you go at all. So, you're doing better. But if you don't understand, this is especially true if you're in a more orthodox religious understanding, to say nothing of the pure Catholicism of this. So in the purely Catholic sense, let's just take a step back here and talk about what happens if we take the story at face value. An unknown cardinal, completely unknown, was not on the registry, shows up on the eve of conclave and says, the Pope made me a cardinal in secret. And everyone has enough of the paperwork and everything that everyone is like, okay, we believe you. We don't think you're, some imposter. Then they go into conclave. And we come out and the new Pope is this Mexican intersex, hyper progressive, let's turn Jesus into a teddy bear. This is how religions die. And I am not joking about that. This is what fractures and destroys religious institutions and religious thought, religious worldview.
I want to drill into, look, I'm going to say a couple of things here. I need everyone to take a deep breath and understand that I am an ally of the LGBTQI community, and that none of this is to say these are not people and they should be treated badly or anything else like that. We're having an intellectual conversation. If it's too much for you, I suggest you go listen to one of Alexis's podcasts. Now listen,
we don't need to keep throwing strays at Alexis, just for the record.
Just waiting for you. Be nice to her.
I just saying.
Look,
the stray, the collateral damage here is starting to add up.
I understand from a strict Catholic point of view the problems with non-hetero beings. Okay, when in the religion we are saying heteronormative is the way it should go. This is the expectation. Anything besides that is outside of the realm of what's good. I do understand that. So if he was gay and the Pope was like, you're the guy, I can understand why Ralph Fiennes is having the reaction that he is and why this is controversial and why the idea of let's make the papacy and let's make the Catholic Church this super progressive entity, lest we lose everybody and we don't exist as an institution anymore. I can follow that logic in the narrative. I didn't quite get it with an intersex person. This is a biological issue. This isn't where you're going against the wishes of God by being a homosexual. You were born with female organs. This is completely besides the point. And even if you're like, well, are you implying that homosexuality is a choice? I'm not. But there's still some choice and agency involved in your sexual preference. There isn't in the organs you're born with. That is strictly genetic.
Well,
so
and
how this upends the Catholic Church, I struggled with as a choice.
Well, again, I am not Catholic, so for the record, I am unclear on their official position as it relates to intersex individuals.
Mm-hmm.
But at a minimum, if you're Lawrence and you're reasonably trying to conclude what the fallout's going to be. And when this gets out, and it will,
right?
Because it's going to. This is not the kind of thing you can keep quiet. No matter what the West Wing can lie to you about a president hiding a life-threatening ongoing medical illness. His issue there is he knows that this is going to break apart giant chunks of the Catholic Church when it comes out, is the long and the short of it.
It's fair. There have been other real life issues where the Catholic Church was split on things, and I mean, I'm just talking about in modern times.
I mean, the Catholic Church,
one.
Exists itself because of a schism with the Eastern Orthodoxy, like way back in the day.
Yeah. To repeat what I said, there was a schism within the Catholic Church about the acceptance of gay marriage that still exists to this day. There are, there are like offshoots of the Catholic Church that was like, if you don't accept that gay marriage is a thing and it's part of modernity and you have to accept this, then we'll be our own kind of Catholic elsewhere. This was all captured in The Acolyte, by the way. No, I'm just kidding.
I was about to come over there and strangle you on behalf of a bunch of other people.
Anyway, I had to lighten the mood. I'm going to cede the rest of them. I wanted to address the intersex thing and like why this was an issue. I don't think we're going to get any further than where we are right now, so I'm dropping it. But I'm going to give you the last word on what your problem with this movie is in 50 words or less, and then we're moving on. Go.
My main problem with this movie actually is the ending. The entire bit about Benitez suddenly being intersex is a weird, last-second, feels like M. Night Shyamalan broke into your script writing room at the 11th hour.
Mm-hmm.
I was not the biggest fan of Benitez winning it to begin with, and I'll just go with the why, because for most of this movie, I was very much with this film. There's a lot good about this. It's a nice, I'm going to say it's an adult film, and y'all know what I mean. Like, we watch so many movies for freaking children on this podcast that it's nice to watch a movie that's made for adults. And so I was with it. There's a lot that I really like about it. Again, the acting is pretty much across the board good to great. The narrative loses a little steam in a few different places because this doesn't quite have the story for its runtime. And again, that's a minor gripe. The problem with the ending as it stands is that you make me re-examine everything that happened before, and you kind of force me to look at it through the most cynical eyes possible because of how you ended this. Because you ended this with the most... It's a charitable way to phrase this. You ended this with the most... I'm going to call it fan fiction element you possibly could. This is your self-insert, boy, wouldn't it be wonderful if.
I don't know how the book goes, but I almost feel like what they wanted to do was a trans or gay pope.
Yeah.
And someone went, "Are you fucking kidding me?" And they were like, "Well, what if it's intersex?" Fine, coward.
Well, believe it or not, intersex is actually a more interesting problem to have. Because
it absolutely is, but I don't think I'm guessing and projecting.
I completely agree with you for the record.
Yeah.
Completely agree with you.
They wanted a pope to be on, RuPaul's Drag Race, and there's an executive going, "I'll kill you all." No, you child.
But again, because we end it with your... Okay, go ahead and look that up if you're so inclined. But because you end this with, again, borderline like self-insert, pie in the sky fan fiction, it means that the only way to properly assess everything that came before is to look at it as cynically as possible to understand what's actually going on. The more you... Kind of the same way that if you want to understand an extremely cynical story, film, whatever, it's actually to look at it through idealistic eyes is the best way to understand what's going on. So you have to reverse that for this. And suddenly you leave me, film, with the following. Of course, the liberal cardinal is a pansy with no spine. Of course, the Italian traditionalist conservative is your Trump analog, and everything about him is bad, including his racism, which you make all but explicit. Of course, the cardinal from Africa has a troubled past, but because he's black, we're going to give him he's going to be the one that is the most redeemed via circumstance and how everyone else treats him out of everybody. And of course, our hero is the soft-spoken, again, advocacy for teddy bear Jesus theology, Mexican intersex person that you could throw in here. I can't look at this movie the same way once you get to the ending, because it means you have to reevaluate it cynically to understand what's happened here and how everyone involved in the creation of this on an artistic level, on a story level, is just wish fulfilling how you want every system of power you encounter to go, because that's the only way you conceptualize and understand anything approximating religion, is as a system of power you postmodernist hack.
Great. Postmodernist hack is... Nope, stop.
Give me 1 second, because there's a nice thing I have to say about this with respect to this.
Okay.
It is to the supreme credit and nuance of elements of this movie that a handful of characters are portrayed as genuinely being faithful, and they're not made to look foolish about it. In the hands of lesser people, this would have been a comedy of errors better suited to the Marx Brothers.
In Conclave by Robert Harris, which the movie is based on, the surprising twist is that the newly elected Pope, Cardinal Lawrence, discovers that the chosen Pope is biologically intersex. The character is referred to as Jacinta, but this revelation is handled subtly and with nuance. It is not explicitly framed in terms of being intersex, trans, or gay within the narrative, but rather as a secret that would be controversial in the context of the church's traditionalist views. The novel leans more on thematic tension between personal identity and the institution rather than categorizing it with modern labels. And I want to read this also because I kind of doubled down and be like, yeah, but. The film adaptation directed by Edward Berger closely follows the novel's narrative. While the portrayal of Cardinal Benitez's intersex condition has sparked discussions about LGBTQ+ representation, there is no indication that the filmmakers intended to depict the character as transgender or gay. Instead, the focus remains on the broader themes of identity and acceptance within a traditionally conservative institution. In summary, neither the author nor the filmmaker specifically aimed to portray the Pope as transgender or gay. Their intention was to delve into the themes of identity and challenge established norms within the church through the character's intersex condition, which I think it does moderately well. Your individual comfort level with it is your own thing. All right, moving on to A Complete Unknown, which I took my kids to go see, and we had a good time with this. And just as an aside, my ex-wife's cousin is a roadie for Bob Dylan. He can be a handful. A Complete Unknown is a
cousin or Bob Dylan.
A Complete Unknown is a 2024 American biological musical drama film directed by James Mangold. If you don't know who James Mangold is, well, you should.
He is one of cinema's greatest monsters now.
Yes, he wrote and directed Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
He did not write that. He is falling on a grenade for a bunch of other people in that respect.
He directed and produced Ford versus Ferrari. He is the hero we need and love who wrote and directed Logan, one of the last great comic book movies committed to film. He also directed The Wolverine. He directed 3:10 to Yuma. He wrote and directed Walk the Line. He wrote and I didn't realize that this was him. He wrote and directed Girl Interrupted, which is great if you haven't seen it, by the way, which I believe Sean and I actually did this one of the Pride months.
There's no way you and Sean have not talked about Girl Interrupted.
No, I'm 90% certain we covered this. And then finally, he wrote and directed Copland, which is one of the best movies I've ever seen. It's awesome. It's amazing
how one movie can flush all of that goodwill down the toilet and turn you into one of cinema's greatest monsters.
He was a story consultant for Deadpool versus Wolverine, some people's best movie of 2024. Dirt heap. Anywho, it's just so you don't think like why is he picking at Alexis? That was also directed at Neil, who I went on a rant last night about Alexis picking Deadpool versus Wolverine as the number one movie of the year, and then he goes, and my number one movie of the year, Deadpool and Wolverine, you jerk. So anyway,
really, do you just watch Curb Your Enthusiasm and go, this is my life?
No, because I don't watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, but probably.
That's a good call. That's a really good call for the record.
Who co-wrote the screenplay with Jay Cox about the American singer-songwriter Bob Dylan, based on the 2015 book Dylan Goes Electric by Elijah Wald, which I'm really interested in reading. The film portrays Dylan through his earliest folk music success until the momentous controversial over his use of electric instruments at the 1965 Newport Folk Festival. Timothée Chalamet stars as Dylan, Edward Norton, Elle Fanning, Monica Barbaro, Boyd Holbrook, Dan Fogler, Norbert Leo Butz, Eriko Hatsune, Big Bill Morganfield, Will Harrison, Scoot McNairy are in supporting roles. The film's title is derived from the chorus of Dylan's 1965 single, Like a Rolling Stone. It was named one of the top 10 films of 2024 by the American Film Institute and National Board of Review, the latter of which also awarded Fanning Best Supporting Actress. The film earned 8 nominations at the 90s. The film earned 8 nominations at the 97th Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor for Timothée Chalamet, Best Supporting Actor Edward Norton, Best Supporting Actress Barbaro. It also received 3 nominations at the 82nd Golden Globes, including Best Motion Picture Drama, 3 at the Critics' Choice Awards, including Best Picture, 4 at the 31st Screen Actors Guild Award, including Outstanding Performance by a Cast in a Motion Picture, and 6 at the British Academy Awards, including Best Film. On a $70 million budget, it's currently at $74.1 million and not available to stream anywhere. You have to go to a theaters, you lunatics. All right, Robert, what happens in this movie in 50 words or less?
So Bob Dylan rolls into town, wanting to see Woody Guthrie, who has been diagnosed.
Talking like he's a gunslinger.
He's not that interesting.
Bob Dylan just rolls in there, ready to take things over.
So he rolls in on the back of a bus with a guitar and a desire to see Woody Guthrie, who is diagnosed with some terminal illness that is, I forget what he had. It looks like muscular dystrophy or something similar, but could you confirm that?
Sure.
Anyway, while there, he meets Edward Norton, who is, even in the, early 60s, an old hippie. Who is kind of in charge, like the godfather of the folk scene. He is struck by Bob Dylan's ability, and we follow Bob Dylan for a few years as he rises through the ranks of folk music. He gets signed to record deals, and then we see his disillusionment with folk music, and with all the people who get to tell him what folk music is and what he has to play. He becomes more interested in the blues and in electric music, and wants to go a different direction. And this culminates at the aforementioned folk festival, where he goes out and he plays rock and roll on the electric guitar.
Huntington's disease.
Ah, thank you. Still terrible.
Yes.
But yeah. And nearly causes a riot at a folk festival, which had to be a first.
All we are saying is kill this motherfucker.
He goes to leave. He gets kind of talked into going out and doing one encore, which he does in the acoustic format. Then he leaves to go pursue artistic fulfillment in the electric field, and releases a seminal album after that. And everyone else keeps trying to be hippies, and it fails miserably because, of course, it does.
I love this movie. It was in my top 10 for the year because I'm an adult. I think Timothée Chalamet was perfect as Dylan. I love the storyline here. I've talked about this now every time I've had to bring up this movie. Over the course of doing Metal Hammer of Doom, one of the things I've talked to Jesse about is how I think music can provide artistic context to a political movement, to a struggle. I think it can bring attention to things. In and of itself, music does not change political reality. Political reality is changed by either giant protests that cause shame on politicians enough that they feel pressure to change things, or when politicians actually do the things they're supposed to do. The music in and of itself does not do that. And the belief that it does seems to be the life's blood of people going from, not Janis Joplin. Who is this in this movie? Help me. Monica Barbaro's character.
Joan Baez.
Thank you. From Joan Baez to Fat Mike to Al Jorgensen. and I've said at the time, I remember like we were reviewing an OTAP album, and I said to Jesse, I was just like, you can be as angry as you want and put all this protest music out there. It ain't changing shit. So I hope it makes you happy, because otherwise,
you'd think we all would have learned that when Green Day was just releasing like 4 albums in a row that are all "We Hate Bush."
Yeah, and it mattered not.
And only one of them was about the rival band.
And that's kind of the story here, and it's actually told through the prism somewhat of his relationship with Elle Fanning's character, which I think is great, because here you have a boy who loves a girl, and the girl loves protesting. The girl loves fighting for civil rights and social justice. And he's like, at some point, do you love me? And she was like, sure, but the people, don't you understand? And he's so aggravated by this. And he's so aggravated by what feels like an emptiness of the movement. You know, it just feels like people patting themselves on the back, and
it is.
Speaking,
I can't tell. I need to say this.
Mm-hmm.
The scene where Edward Norton tries to convince him to play folk music one more time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is the tipping point. This will be what does it. Anyone other than Edward Norton in that scene probably comes across as just horribly manipulative and unbearably slimy. But because Edward Norton is
this is yet another iteration of Anthony Mackie in Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Well, it is, but there's 2 things that separate it. One, he's actually making a very specific request instead of a vague call to be better.
Yes, sir.
He's saying he's wrong in his assessment, but he's giving a very specific prescription for what he wants to happen, why he thinks it should happen, and he's so earnest about it that you understand the man has just drunk too much of his own Kool-Aid, and he's wrong, but he is sincere, and that makes all the difference in the world.
I don't want to draw a parallel and have you go off the deep end, so I need you to breathe. And
I will not jump off the diving board. I am poised on the platform, but I will not jump yet.
Imagine what happens when your religious belief is challenged, when your faith is challenged, and everything you believe to be good and true in this world is proven to, at the very least, be suspect. That's where he's coming from. For these people in this movie, the folk music movement was their religion. Yeah. And their belief that they could end the Vietnam War with blowing in the wind was, was the prayer, was their prayer. It was the most important thing ever. And it's not working out, and they are clinging to it like Rose on the raft at the end of fucking Titanic. And there's Bob Dylan kicking the raft. Fuck off. This isn't happening. And they can't handle it. And again, look, better and lesser men than both of us have really struggled with the entirety of their religious foundation being rocked and challenged. So that's what's happening in this movie. But what I was saying was, I love the idea of Bob Dylan just wants to be loved, and he wants to make art, and he can't seem to do either one of those things without aggravating everyone around him. And finally, he just throws his hands up and says, well, fuck it then. I'm going to do this for myself. I'm going to be my own person. And if you're with me, you're with me. And if you're not, you're not. But I'm going to be the most authentic Bob Dylan I can be and make stuff that I find interesting. And to hell with you. And I went, Bob Dylan is the hero we need right now, not the one we deserve.
He comes
love that movie. Speaks to me personally. It's why I rated it as high as I did. I love that.
He comes to the moment that I think most artists, especially successful ones, come to. He's at a point. Well, I'm talking specifically in the artistic realm, but
sure,
this is applicable elsewhere. But he is presented with the option of, I can make pretty good money going out there and playing Freebird. I mean, Blowing in the Wind. I mean, Separate Ways. I mean, Hotel California. I mean,
Welcome to the Jungle. Enter Sandman. I can do this too.
Yeah. Well, I was specifically going for bands that clearly fell off.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not entirely sure that Guns N' Roses ever had a peak, but
the example that I often go to is Jello Biafra of the Dead Kennedys saying, I don't want to sing Holiday in Cambodia for my lunch.
Yeah, and he's tired of, he's had a few different concerts now where he's gone out and people have been, they did the Play Freebird thing.
Yeah.
For them, it's blowing in the wind, not Freebird, obviously, but that's become the cultural touchstone of Play Freebird.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to play Blowing in the Wind. He doesn't believe in set lists, or he wants to get out there and he wants to be an artist. So you're at this point where you can decide, all right, I'm going to abandon my artistic dreams and pursuits in favor of pursuing and in favor of doing what the people want, and I will be happy, and I will, in 10 years be playing county fairs, but I'll still be getting paid. Because the graveyard of bands that have tried to change their style in pursuit of artistic integrity and have blown up as a result, the number of musical acts that is true of, outweighs the ones who do it successfully by such an enormous number. It doesn't even bear thinking about as a general rule. But he decides that that's the direction he's going to go, and fair play to him. You just have to be willing to live with the consequences. It really is a question of, am I happier to live with the consequences of abandoning my artistic desires, or am I happier to live with the consequences of the very real probability even, of this failing spectacularly, and me now having burned all my bridges?
The performances in this movie are all spot on. Timothée Chalamet, I wish there were still such things as movie stars, because Timothée Chalamet would be one of them.
Yeah.
He is a phenomenal actor. Everything that he's touched personally, his performance in it has been spectacular. He's really, really good.
He's a very good actor.
Elle Fanning is great in this. I too wanted to punch Elle Fanning in the face, so good job on her for drawing that emotion out of me. Monica Barbaro as Joan Baez, I remembered at that time. She's excellent in this, and her frustration with Timothée Chalamet wanting to hit him Jeff Jarrett El Kabong style with a guitar. I was right there with her. I was like, I'm not against all the women in this movie. I was on Joan Baez's side. Just like, you son of a bitch. Ed Norton is probably giving.
Her reaction to Bob Dylan is basically, do you have to make literally everything a giant fight? And Bob Dylan's response is,
his answer to her is he blows with a harmonica, at which point she hits herself with a guitar. Ed Norton, it probably gives my favorite performance in this, because if you've seen Ed Norton in anything else, you know what Ed Norton sounds like. But here, he's doing that folk voice. It's kind of like Mr. Rogers. It sounds like he has no penis, but this is the whole thing. This is the speech and rhythm and cadence of his entire performance, and he never breaks it. And it's a wonderful thing, Robert, that you can speak like this for the entirety of a film and not break this rhythm and not break this cadence. And isn't that wonderful? And we should all give Ed Norton a giant hand.
I'd prefer to give him.
Yeah, I loved Ed Norton in this. He's so great, because even when he's like exasperated, practically begging Bob Dylan to please, our entire movement depends on you. You are our leader. You are, and
don't you?
Dylan's like,
that whole speech is so weird. Don't you understand? The rest of us have just been ants trying to get this thing off the ground. You are the chosen one, Anakin. You were supposed to destroy the rock and roll, not join them. Sorry, right. Wrong movie.
But he never breaks out of that Mr. Rogers cadence, and it's really great.
He doesn't. It's a
so
really good performance
from
Norton.
Yeah. Outside of that, I don't have much else to say. Like I said, I love the story. Of the three movies that we're talking about, this probably has my favorite story. This has the one that I personally resonated with. The performance in all three of these movies are all brilliant. It would be, I know who, I have a sneaky suspicion I know who's going to win the awards, but it's tough competition.
It's probably Adrian Brody.
Yeah, it's tough competition this year. We're talking we're winning by a hair's breadth here, not by country miles. So
again, my vote would be for Ralph Fiennes personally, but
sure. So
it's hard to go wrong.
I had, you complained about The Brutalist, you complained about Conclave, you said nothing about A Complete Unknown. So what were your thoughts?
Very little, other than what we've said. This didn't touch me. This didn't move me. It's a good movie, but I think my problem with it is I don't expect this to be the kind of movie that comes that where like they gain some deep insight into the enigma wrapped in a riddle, wrapped in a mystery, wrapped in a Jeff Hardy Coke fuel that is Bob Dylan. But they almost leave him too enigmatic. He is more an object to be acted upon by the story than anything acting of his own volition for the vast majority of it.
I don't disagree with that, but I would disagree in the sense that I think that works in the film's favor. Because this isn't necessarily, I mean, yes, it's about Bob Dylan, but it isn't entirely about Bob Dylan. It is about this idea. And so if we're focusing too much on what a douchebag Bob Dylan is, you don't get enough of the idea.
Well, there's a degree to which the idea is, this story begins and ends with Woody Guthrie. He's actually presented as the heart of folk. Because Bob Dylan comes along as he is no longer able to perform, and then he leaves right before he dies. And it is to this movie's strength overall that it doesn't try to do the same thing every other musical biopic does, and I give it credit for that. Especially because James Mangold did it about as well as you could do that formula with Walk the Line. But again, leaving Bob Dylan as completely opaque as they do, I think does work a little bit against it. I don't need piercing insight. I don't need a Hamlet monologue out of the guy, really.
Mm-hmm.
But something other than giving me the impression that all I'm doing is getting this borders on being hey, let's take a window into this one brief time period and then we're just going to close it at the end. Now, it's
Borders,
better.
that's exactly what it is.
Hang on. The reason I think it does a slightly better job than The Bike Riders, which is my point of comparison here.
Oh, it's a much better film than The Bike Riders.
Would you let me? No, but I'm making the point. Like we talked about Bike Riders struggling because there's not really a narrative. It exists as an exercise into looking at this point in the past.
Mm-hmm.
This borders on that same problem for me.
You're alone on an island then, because I 100% disagree with you, but keep going.
That's fine. I'll be alone on the island.
Mm.
It's largely helped by them picking a very specific window of time that actually does have a definitive beginning and end point.
Yeah.
But there's just, I don't know, nothing, like I said, nothing about this moved me. Like nothing about this really struck me. I was not emotionally invested in anything that was going on. And some of this is just me. It's why I didn't hold it against the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's why I'm praising some of the craft elements. Like there's a lot good here, but
Right.
you know, what did I personally think about it? It's a meh. It's a shrug. It's a well-made shrug.
I will tell you this. It's funny because my son didn't like it either. My daughter loved it. I've been gushing about it, and I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to move on. I think there's something to be said for life experience in this movie. There are very specific life experiences that I've had, both tangentially and directly in the music industry, and directly in relationships with women. And because of those things, this movie resonates deeply with me. If you have not had those life experiences, and there's no other inroad for you to relate to this movie, then yeah, I can kind of then you're like my son, who it didn't touch him either. You know, he has not the life experiences. I'll just leave it at that. He has not the life experiences to have really. So all he had was what the movie presented, and the movie presented, as you said, this window of time. He doesn't have the historical context, the social context. I kind of had to. My daughter, my son, and I all had to have a conversation in the car
about the hippie
movie.
movement.
Yeah, about the Vietnam War, the hippie
Yeah.
movement, folk music. You know, both. My son hates punk rock and everything it stands for.
That is the most punk rock thing he could be doing. Have you told him that?
Yes, and then there's my daughter who, you know, that she likes the style, she likes the grace, she likes that Rita Hayworth gives good face. You know, she's very much all about punk and emo and goth and all of that style. And so I was talking to them about the movie, and they got it as we were talking about it, but it made Jonas appreciate the movie more once we talked about it. But his viewing experience of it was, I don't get it. Like, why is this important? If you're like my son, you really don't, and not to say that you are, but if you don't have the social context, you don't have the historical context, and you don't have the experiential context, you're going to struggle with this movie. Beyond the fact that, whether or not you like the music and whether or not you enjoy the performances, and that's entirely subjective. But
And as a guy who only had 2 of those 3 pillars, I can tell you, if you're missing any of them, this whole thing falls apart.
I would agree with that. I love A Complete Unknown. I don't know if anyone got that. It's in theaters right now. Oh gosh, who did this one? This will eventually be on Disney Plus or Hulu. It's a Searchlight. That's a Fox company, and Fox is Disney. So if you can't get to the theaters to see it before the Oscars, and you wait for it to come on Disney Plus and give it a whirl, throw it in the bed with Madonna and see if she sleeps with it, it'll be worth your time. I went into this kind of like, I didn't really know what it was. I didn't really know. I had to go back and learn about the history of what happened at the folk festival. Yeah, you should absolutely give this movie a look. It's not going to win Best Picture. It doesn't deserve to win Best Picture. The other awards, the other accolades that it's in line for, a lot of these are coin tosses. You can kind of go either way. So that's A Complete Unknown. And now we go to the third movie, The Brutalist. All 12 hours of it. The Brutalist is a 2024 epic period film directed and produced by Brandy Corbett, from a script he co-wrote with Mona Fazvold. If you don't know who Brady Corbett is, neither do I. However, he, before this, wrote and directed Vox Lux, which is a 2018 American musical drama. He wrote, directed, and produced The Childhood of a Leader. He wrote The Sleepwalker, and he has a story credit for Simon Killer. He's done a bunch of acting. He was, back in 2014, he was in While We Were Young, The Sleepwalker, St. Laurent, Force Majeure, Eden, Clouds of Sils Maria, etc., etc. He's got a couple of credits for The Homemade and The Crowded Room. These are on TV. And hey, he was on an episode of The King of Queens. How about that shit? He was on an episode of 24 of Law and Order and Olive Kitteridge. So that's the director. Back to what this is. A co-production between the United States, the United Kingdom, and Hungary. It stars Adrian Brody as a Hungarian-born Jewish Holocaust survivor who immigrates to the United States, where he struggles to achieve the American dream until a wealthy client changes his life. The cast also features Felicity Jones, Guy Pearce, Joe Alwyn, Rafi Cassidy, Stacey Martin, Emma Laird, Isaac de Bunkhole, and Alessandra Nivola. And The Brutalist premiered at the 81st Venice International Film Festival on September 1st.
And wrapped up yesterday.
Where Corbett was awarded the Silver Lion for Best Direction and was named one of the top 10 films of 2024 by the American Film Institute. The film earned 10 nominations at the 97th Academy Award, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor for Brody, Best Supporting Actress for Jones, Best Supporting Actor for Pierce, and they should all 3 win. And the 82nd Golden Globe Awards won 3 awards, including Best Motion Picture Drama. It was released by the United States by A24. Boy, A24, either Grand Slam or Complete Strikeout. On December 20, 2024.
That's the roll of the dice you take with their business model.
Yeah. And in the United Kingdom by Universal Pictures and Focus Features, which means this will eventually be on Peacock. No, A24 has the thing with Max. So, okay. It'll either be on Max or Peacock eventually. On a $9.6 million budget, it's currently made $11.7 million. Robert, if you start with the plot synopsis now, we'll be done by the time I have to go to work at 5 o'clock in the morning. Go.
Challenge accepted.
Okay, I'm going to look at my scores, see if I won any money.
So, The Brutalist, as you mentioned, tells the story of Laszlo. Oh, why am I blanking on his last name? Crap. Now I got to look it up.
I got it.
Oh.
Laszlo Toth.
Right, tough. Thank you. Again, as Mark mentioned, he is a Hungarian Jew who survived the Holocaust. He's mentioned specifically at the end as being in Buchenwald. And he arrives at the beginning in New York, like you do. And what's the first thing everyone does when they get to New York? They go to a whorehouse.
I believe that's just true now as it ever was.
And just like about 80% of people who see New York horrors, he is unable to perform.
Wah, wah, wah.
I just wanted to see if I could get you with that one. He winds up relocating to Pennsylvania, where he has a shitty cousin who runs a furniture store business.
He's
He
my
gets
favorite
put up-
character in this, by the way.
I don't have a favorite character in this.
All right, just keep going.
You know, ask me again when I get done synopsizing, I'll tell you, and we'll just kind of roll with that.
It's okay.
While there, he gets hired by a rich kid. Their group gets hired by a rich kid to remodel their father's study into a proper library. And Laszlo is again was an architect back in Austria, back in Hungary rather, not Austria. The Austro-Hungarian Empire was very close to this point in time, so if I confuse those, that's why. And they remodel the interior. It goes well. He creates a nice little reading space. But Guy Pearce, playing the rich old man, arrives home a day early with his sick mother, is unhappy to find construction going on in his home that he is not aware of and did not approve of, throws them out. The kid then stiffs them on the bill because he's a jerk. Laszlo's cousin then goes, "You have ruined my business, and my wife says you made a pass at her, so get out of my house."
By the way, my wife says you made a pass at her, and he's practically shoved him on top of her. And by the way, so just to describe that scene to you, so they're all kind of just hanging out in the kitchen. The kitchen's about the size of my desk, and the cousin's just like, "Go dance with my wife." He's like sitting on his lap. He's like caressing his face. He's like, it's like this is the gayest thing I've ever seen. He's just like licking him.
We watched
like,
Amelia Perez.
Yeah, and this is still the gayest thing I've seen in cinema. He's just like, "Come on, baby, come on, go dance with my wife, come on." And he's like, "No, I really don't want to. No, please stop. No, ow, you're hurting me. No, please stop. I don't want to." He's like, "Get up and go dance with my wife. What are you doing here?" And he's like, "Fine, I will."
We both know what you were gonna say there, Mark. It's okay. It's just you and me.
And all of our friends. And he finally gets up and he dances with the wife like two awkward teenagers at a junior high dance. And then the scene ends, and 2 scenes later, he's like, "And my wife says you made a pass at her." And how Adrian Brody didn't throw him through the wall like the Hulk, I'll never know. But go on.
So he winds up in charity housing. He befriends a single black father and his kid, and he's doing menial labor, some construction work and whatnot, just trying to make ends meet. And then the rich guy, played by Guy Pearce, shows up again and goes, "Hey, you did that work that I threw you out of the house over. I'm sorry about that. It was a super stressful. That happened at the exact wrong time, man. I was showing up with my really sick mother, who it turns out was dying and passed away a couple of days later. And it just, I'm sorry about that. And I just found out my son stiffed you on the bill. So here's the money I owe you. And really sorry about all that. And I actually really like the thing you built me. So I looked into some of your previous work, and he displays god-awful brutalist architecture, which I loathe personally, and we'll get into that later. And he said, like, why don't you come to dinner with me? Come to my house. There's a party. I want to talk with you. I find you interesting. And he goes, "Yeah, I don't have anything better to do, so sure." So he goes to this dinner party, is briefly hooked up with, he makes contact with a lawyer who's like, "Your wife and your niece are still stuck somewhere in the Soviet-controlled end of things in Hungary. although the Hungarians actually booted the Russians out of Hungary, they were part of the Soviet Union, but they were like one of the only places where the Soviets didn't have direct control. Hungary's got a weird history, man. It's actually kind of fascinating. Anyway, like, they're still over there. I know what's up. I can help you out with this, and yes, please, thank you. And then Guy Pearce goes, so I want to build a big thing in memory of my late mother. I want to do it on this big hill. And Laszlo, I think you do great work. I would like you to do it. And he goes, you know what? I don't have anything else going on. Sure, why not? So they navigate some of the permitted spaces. They get him licensed. They have to get this approved by the city council. There's a town meeting where, of course, all the nice white people in Pennsylvania object to the foreign Jew.
Cause the mid-20th century.
I wish I was joking. Ultimately, they do get approval. They start work. But because Laszlo is ambitious and kind of a twat and a heroin addict, he winds up doing this
morphine.
Uh-huh.
Keep going.
It might have started that way.
Keep going.
It devolved into street level narcotics pretty darn fast. His wife and niece do arrive eventually, but his wife is suffering from.
You're right. You're right. It's heroin. My apologies. I thought it was morphine the entire time. Keep going.
Again, it started as morphine because it started legitimate, and then when he couldn't get the prescription,
like all things, it turns to heroin.
Most heroin or meth, take your pick. Anyway, so his wife and niece arrive. His wife is wheelchair bound because she's dealing with osteoporosis brought on by severe malnutrition because of the famine in the Soviet Union, because the Soviet Union sucked. For those of you who may lack a little bit of historical context for this whole thing, any successful farmer in the Soviet Union was thought of to be an enemy of the people because this person knows what they're doing. And they were shot. And the thought was, okay, this is now the people's farm. So the people, you get to farm it. And it turns out farming is a skill that not any monkey with a trowel can do. So thousands of people, millions of people starved to death because the Soviet Union sucked. Anyway, that's why she's in the wheelchair, if you need the context for that. And the whole thing gets derailed, quite literally, when there's a train derailment. That is, like, the trains that are owned by Guy Pearce and his boxcars have an issue when they're transporting materials to the work site. Now he's got this hullabaloo to deal with, so he suspends the project and has to go deal with the litigation and the investigation and the insurance and all those 9 yards. So Laszlo and the niece and his wife, they move to New York, which is a mistake. He gets a job as a draftsman. So he's still working in the architectural field, but he's just working for somebody else at a drawing desk. His wife is a journalist and is now writing like women's advice columns in a newspaper. And they're all dying quiet deaths. His niece gets married, becomes pregnant, and then tells them, yeah, we're going to go to live in Israel because it's what we should do. We're going to go to Jerusalem and we think you should come with us. And like, no, because I just got this job to go finish my unfinished masterpiece. It's still sitting there, like a quarter built, and it haunts me. Now I must go finish what I have started. So he goes to finish that, and his wife is now pissed at him, but they make more progress. And then he and Guy Pearce go to Italy to pick out marble for an altar, because one of the conditions that upon which this thing is built is that there's a chapel for the whatever Protestant denomination you wanted to throw into that area. And while there, they get involved in a party in the marble quarries, and Guy Pearce rapes Adrian Brody.
Like you do.
The
The parallel, is a story that Dave Chappelle told about one of P. Diddy's Puff Daddy's freak offs or whatever the hell they're called.
That's it. They're
Where he
terrible.
goes, there's nothing like making another man do your bidding for you. It's a joke that Dave Chappelle told about the Carl Winslow from Family Matters. That's about that scene. It's just, so there's Adrian Brody lying in a puddle of his own
vomit as he has just shot up.
Yeah, I was gonna say shame. And
then in walks J.K. Simmons with his Nazi tattoos.
Yeah. So in walks Guy Pearce.
Tells him, "You're my livestock now."
No.
Sorry,
a man should not be shooting heroin. You have some self-respect. In fact, I'll show you how to have some self-respect, and proceeds to rape him. I'm gonna rape the self-respect into you. That's what was happening in that scene. I'll show you how to behave like a man, and then proceeds to have anal intercourse with him against his will. Like you do.
Say that one more time, Mark. Go ahead.
Moving on. I just want to give the people context. Not many people saw the film, and I want to make sure they have a vivid picture of what happens in that scene. Context.
Neither of them actually takes their clothes off.
Well,
I'm okay. Did I ruin your fun yet? Because I can.
Please move forward. I'm done. You're done.
Okay. So they go back. They continue trying to do the work, but now, Adrian Brody got raped, so he's not having a good time.
A little bit of a trauma. Why are we laughing at this?
Because it's a stupid movie. Again, he starts to spiral. He's not having a good time. Ultimately, he has his kind of come to Jesus moment when his wife, in serious pain from her ongoing osteoporosis or osteoarthritis issues, she has a prescription for actual medication, but they've run out, so he gives her heroin.
Like you do.
Thank you. And gives her too much, and she's not used to it at all. So after they get really high and have really awkward sex, didn't need that scene to go on as long as it did either, by the way. 3 hour and 40-minute runtime.
You haven't lived until you've seen that kind of a thing in Baby Girl. Keep going.
She overdoses, sitting on the toilet like Elvis. But he's able to get her to a hospital. They're able to save her. And she tells him, when we were high and having sex, you confessed to me everything that happened. And it's okay. I still love you. Let's go to Israel, where nothing bad will ever happen to us ever again.
Not in the pizza place. Not at the park. Not on a bus. Nowhere.
Then she, with the strength of being a good wife, uses a walker, goes to confront the people, calls Guy Pearce a rapist, gets dragged out of a room by his kid. Guy Pearce wanders off into the construction site of his unfinished monstrosity, ostensibly commits suicide. We flash forward to very old Laszlo in a chair, unable to speak, as there is a big celebration of his life and work in Venice. And we are told by the actress giving a minor speech on his behalf that it is, in fact, the destination, not the journey, in which case, you bastard, you wasted 3.5 hours of my life.
They also say that his architectural designs were drawn as inspiration from his time in a concentration camp.
And his wife's, which is a weird thing to shoehorn in at the end about his inspiration for this project. Just saying.
I don't think it was shoehorned in. I think it was there. It was in the subtext. But I don't think a lot of us understand in 2025 what concentration camps look like. So that gets a bit lost on the modern audience.
Okay, the general brutalist aesthetic, yes, but when he's talking about like the layouts of the rooms and whatnot, I don't need him to say I need it this way because that's what I was in. But him being a little bit more neurotic about some of those specific things instead of being neurotic about the whole thing in general.
As a director's choice, what are you going to do? Flashbacks? I think it would have cheapened the aesthetic of the movie. I think it's fine the way it is. You're allowed to have your opinion, but it's another one I disagree with. I think, because I get what you're saying, it kind of feels like it's out of left field, but it's one of those where you go back and watch the movie It's there the entire time. I just don't think we're educated enough in what's happening in the movie to know, to see it before we're told it's there at the end. I love this movie. I absolutely think it deserves Best Picture. I was on the edge of my seat, not because I had to pee, but because I was really into it. I absolutely like the performances in this. Adrian Brody is phenomenal. This might be Guy Pearce like best movie ever. Like he
Probably.
is outstanding in this. Felicity Jones was one of the many actresses whose career was ruined by Star Wars, and people think she can't act. And then you see this, and you go, "Oh my God, that poor dear! She's awesome in this. She absolutely is. Just gives incredible performance." The cinematography, the landscapes, the dreariness of that area of Pennsylvania are gorgeous. The actual like architectural presentations in the movie are interesting to look at. The Brutalist kind of works on two levels. One, it's the style of architecture, but also sort of the quasi-brutal nature of the mid-20th century immigrant experience. It's one of those things where I think this is as resident a tale now as it was back then, in the sense of we're still kind of dealing with what happens to people trying to come to this country for a better life. Because even if you come here legally, it's still an uphill battle to become part of the melting pot. You're still dealing with prejudices, outright racism. You're still dealing with a country that absolutely wants to use you, but doesn't want you really. That came up today at work, as a matter of fact. I think
why.
So there's an issue going on with the president. I don't know if you know about that. I don't want to talk about it. But I think that the movie very much speaks to what's going on right now, and that's to its credit. I didn't feel the runtime. I know that sounds crazy, but like we made the ongoing joke. It's become a meme between the two of us. It's a running gag about the Irishman and how long it was, and we talked about that with
Killers of the Flower Moon and how long that was.
Napoleon, Oppenheimer, some of these ridiculous 3-hour plus movies, and I think in a lot of those cases, I said I felt its runtime, it meanders in places, yada yada yada. This doesn't for me. When we went to break, I was ready for more movie. I was like it cuts and there's like intermission. I'm like, oh, the only thing I thought was, oh, good, I have to pee. But I was like, oh my, thank God, like I was falling asleep or whatever. No, I was really into it. I was into this guy's story. I was into these performances. I was into these relationships. I wanted to know what happens next. I was in this movie. The second half of it, that's my first half experience. The second half of it, I still have a lot of good things to say about it, but like, yeah, I made kind of a snarky joke about it, but like Guy Pearce raping him in the alley, I'm only half kidding when I was like, and I'm sure he thought he was teaching him a lesson. Like be a man, don't be a junkie. Like, and what a weird mindset for an affluent American male in the mid 20th century to come to that conclusion that the way to get you to behave better is, rape. Weird.
Because Mark,
weird
don't
idea.
you understand? That's all rich white men do is they rape.
Fair. But
the one thing holding you and I back, our commitment to not committing sexual violence.
Sure. The other thing about it is the end does come kind of weird for almost a 4-hour movie, but it comes kind of suddenly and out of nowhere. We get to the end of the movie and we're like, there's no prepping the audience for it. It just kind of we flash forward and we get a speech by I think his niece that talks about his life and then says the thing that
it's his niece, the same Zofia who's been there the whole time.
Yeah. And then, it says, and if he didn't get it, this is, him dealing with the trauma of having lived through the Holocaust. Okay. I think this movie is fantastic. I don't think people are going to watch it. I think they're going to hear 4 hours and go, fuck off. And that's a shame.
As they should.
I think it's a movie worth watching. I say go to the movie theater and see it because we should support movie theaters, but I am not a crazy person. So when this eventually shows up on Max or Peacock, one of the two, and you're able to watch it at home, give your brain some art. You know, give it a jolt of electricity and watch The Brutalist. Robert.
Okay, I did feel this thing's runtime quite a bit. I was not on the edge of my seat. This is where I have to do the adult thing and go, okay, I didn't very much enjoy this movie. I don't plan on ever seeing it again. I don't recommend people see it as a general rule. That said, it is a very well-made movie. It does a lot of interesting things with the score because musical cues in movies are very important. This one deliberately plays with your expectations of them in a bunch of different places. So there's some interesting stuff going on there. It's very well framed. There's a lot of really nice landscape shots. There's a lot of really nice borderline time-lapse stuff as certain things are being built. There's a lot of good stuff there in that respect. The acting is good to great on all fronts. Again, I would not give Adrien Brody the Oscar personally, but that's just me. I have no issues with him being nominated. I will have no issues with him winning if he does.
You know who else I liked in this? Alessandro. I'm sorry, I meant to say this before. Really quickly, Alessandro Nivola as the cousin Attila. He kind of reminded me of what's his face from Maestro, who we make fun of, who's keep trying for an Oscar. Yeah, him.
Bradley Cooper.
Yeah, he's kind of got like a Bradley Cooper thing going on, and he's kind of like in only a few scenes and only a small portion of this movie goes from warm and inviting to slimy in the worst way. I mean, like like if Guy Pearce hadn't raped a guy in this movie, he'd be worse than Guy Pearce. He's so awful. But like,
I'd argue he's still worse than Guy Pearce, but there's other reasons for that.
Like, yeah, just like the trip he takes you on emotionally with his performance is quite phenomenal. I loved him in this, but he's an awful character.
Yeah, this is, I agree with you. This is hands down the best work Guy Pearce that I've ever seen Guy Pearce do. I haven't seen everything he's ever done, so I can't speak to that specifically, but of what I've seen him in, hands down, best thing he's done, best job he's done.
I can't believe this was better than his role in Iron Man 3. I like it when I make your brain hurt.
You joke, but that's the only... I would not be surprised if the average moviegoer knows him from Iron Man 3 or The Count of Monte Cristo.
Moving on.
Some of us know the man actually does have some decent acting talent that he just occasionally has to take a paycheck gig. Like you do. Yeah, this thing's runtime is a bear to get through. This movie was a chore. That doesn't mean it's not worthwhile in a lot of respects, but you were engaged. I was there against my will. And the longer this movie went, the more I...
Welcome to the relationship between Robert and I.
The longer this movie went, the more bored I got by it. And that's not because of the runtime. It's... The first half is better than the second half.
Yeah.
I think if we look at it structurally, everything that goes on before the intermission is, and again, this is not just the fact that that's the break point at about 2 hours of sitting in the theater. It's that everything after, when it picks back up, I wound up in the unfortunate position of going, oh, okay, here's what we're doing. And the first half of the movie, I was kind of willing to take the ride. But after that, like that, if the movie's like a roller coaster, the first half is a little bit interesting. And then you get a glimpse of the track ahead of you and go, oh, the double loops. I mean, it's still the double loops. Like, it's not bad, but, you know what to expect with that. And in the second half of this turns into pretty much every, like, tortured artist and abusive patron story I've ever seen about tortured, oh, society has forced upon me this heroin habit. Whatever will I do apart from shoot myself in the face with a shotgun? Specific reference there.
I'm not taking that bait, sir.
I'm proud of you, Mark. Good for you.
I have self-restraint.
You want to, though.
I don't say Wolverine and Deadpool is the #1 movie of the year. Oh, God damn it. Well, I have a tick now.
You do. You've replaced it. And again, with every abusive patron, because don't you understand, Mark? The constraints upon the artist put upon them by the money men are basically like bending them over in a dark alley and just violating them in every orifice you can get your hands on. Do you understand the subtext, Mark? The rich white man commissioning the artist might as well, just in every instance, be violating him thoroughly.
By the end of this movie, Todd Phillips was pantsless and covered in goo.
Only part of it is own. You know what? There was a lot of rape in 2024 in movies we reviewed.
2024 was a rapey year in cinema.
It kind of was, and I'm weird saying it, but thinking back on it,
that's hilarious. All right, wrap it up there, Sonny.
Ultimately, I think my big problem is if you can look behind the curtain, you see the man behind the curtain on this movie, all you're left with is a piece of art imitating a fake life a fake artist whose fake art is imitating his fake life. What we have here is the worst, most unholy Ouroboros of self-congratulatory nonsense. And that kind of pretension bothers me. I can't engage with it. There's still a lot that's really good here. This is probably going to win Best Picture. I would have no problem with that. In fact, again, by the generalized criteria, give me the 10 that are nominated, which do I think is the best made and probably deserves it. I would, in fact, go with The Brutalist. I don't have a problem with that, but you're asking my personal experience with it. My personal experience with it was half really good, back half overdrawn, a bit overwrought, a few too many scenes that drag on a bit too long, and it's ultimately just, again, self-congratulatory nonsense at its core. And I've seen enough artists filleting themselves over this kind of thing to just not care anymore. Good for you. It doesn't help that what we're dealing with is an architectural style I find utterly loathsome and pathetic.
Can you do that in 20 words or less? Why?
Brutalism? Sure.
Yeah.
It's ugly.
It's 2 words. I'm impressed.
There's a reason every communist society leaned into brutalism. There's a reason every dystopian film uses brutalist architecture to display the power of the totalitarian state. It is a massive, ugly, square, concrete edifice that inspires nothing and imposes upon you a desire to look down, to feel the weight of everything around you, and to shut up and fall in line.
Oh, it's so weird that I like it.
Isn't it? You have to herd cats for in your free time and partially in your professional time. Now,
yeah, that all tracks for me.
Hang on, let me do a brief in defense of brutalism, because while I hate it, I do need to be somewhat fair. The interior space design of brutalism, when done properly, is actually quite nice. The aesthetic of that, I can kind of get behind on occasion. The exterior architecture of brutalism, again, I loathe. I hate it. I hate being around it. It's one of the reasons I hate modern cities, by which I mean anything built after or substantively altered since 1986, when everything has to be big and square and either chrome, glass, or concrete. And it is, again, it is nothing aspirational. It is nothing beautiful. It is
your hell
nothing...
Your hell is Albany. God help you if you ever have to go to Albany, New York, where everything is made of concrete and looks like the structure he builds at the end of this movie.
I am aware of where brutalism has taken root as where most of those buildings exist. I know where they are, so I can avoid them. I don't go to Scotland for the same reason, because Scotland is contrast. Scotland is about half beautiful Gothic architecture and half brutalism that makes you want to just die if the weather and the lack of sunlight and the constant alcohol intake doesn't do it first.
God, that would explain the sense of dread I got when I went to Albany. Like, oh God, I feel like I'm in a concentration camp.
Yeah, brutalism crushes the soul as an aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
As an exercise in art, if you want to do something as an artist, as an artistic exercise, fine. Like, I don't actually begrudge that. But the net result of the movement, like when he does that, when Adrian Brody does this thing in the beginning where he's like, none of this is beautiful. I will make things beautiful. Here's a square that's gray.
Yeah, that is somebody a little too much in love with modern art, giving everyone else the finger.
And
All right.
Again, that sums up the brutalist by and large, and that's why I could not engage with it.
Okay.
Personally.
We're going to talk about this when we get to our big Oscar show in about a month. But I'm just curious, and really, really quickly, of the 8 movies, because there's 2 that left that we haven't seen, because one's currently in theaters, and one doesn't get to theaters for another week or 2. We have a Brazilian film, which I haven't marked on my calendar. Yeah, I'm Still Here comes out on Valentine's Day for those of you that are into that sort of thing. I think, Nickel Boys is either out this weekend or out now, because I have it on the calendar to see with the kids. And it's so funny because they were just like, what's Nickel Boys and why are you taking it? I'm like, I'm taking you because you deserve art and culture in your life, children. Nickel Boys. It's been nominated for a Best Picture. Get in the car. And they were just
so is Amelia Perez. You shouldn't make them watch that either.
Well, it's got stuff in it I don't want them to see. But Nickel Boys, I checked the parents' guide. It doesn't. Anyway, if you'll let me finish, of the 8 movies that we have discussed now, Amelia Perez, I know that's high on your list. Anora, Wicked, Brutalist, Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune. I'm missing one more. Hang on.
Yeah, I assume you have the list right there.
Well, I have art for that show. The Substance, Dick. The Substance. What's Robert's wish? If you had all the votes for the Academy, what would you name as Best Picture?
Okay. I can't change the nominees in this hypothetical.
No, you can't. Stick with the 8 that I said to you.
Okay. Purely personally, I'd go with The Substance.
Yes. I'd agree with you. Believe it or not, when I say The Brutalist is going to win, because I kind of know how the Academy works.
It's not hard to figure out how. Look, you want to know who is going to win? It's either The Brutalist because everything about it appeals to that sensibility, or it's Amelia
Wicked.
Perez because Orange Man bad.
I was going to say, or Wicked because make a populist choice.
Wicked has no chance here. Wicked is not the populist choice.
In any case, because we are people who tend to deconstruct and we know how things work. The Brutalist is, why I think it's the heavy favorite to win the Oscars. But if you're just asking me who you want to win, who's your sympathetic choice, I'm 100% with you. It's The Substance. It's one of the most creative, darn near perfect. I think what was my only complaint about The Substance is maybe cut some of these scenes of her staring in the fucking mirror that went on for an hour and a half. And cut them down, not cut them out completely. But like the rest of it,
there's a few too many lingering shots of anatomy parts that you could, again, I'm with you. Like cut, trim, not remove,
right.
Trim. Like there's a real fine line there that could have been walked.
Yeah, we were talking about that last night because it was either like 2 or 3 on everybody's list on movies that don't suck, and I brought that up. I was like, maybe cut down some of these. I wouldn't. I'm not going to go as far as to say they're male gazy, but we could have lost some runtime and cut some of this. And Chris is like, oh, but the point is, I'm like, I know what the fucking point is. You make your point, and you can still cut it. Like that got a little self-indulgent.
Again, a tad. Like when removing them entirely would defeat the purpose and would actually hinder the movie.
You can't do the movie without them. However, you get the point.
You can exercise a degree of restraint.
Yeah, like there were points where I thought my television froze watching the movie. So it's like what the fuck? All right, folks, that is our triple feature on Conclave, A Complete Unknown, and The Brutalist. And for those of you keeping score, that is how you disagree with your friend. Okay, we did an hour and 45 minutes of a discussion where we did not agree on a lot, but but it didn't end with one of us wanting to kill the other, at least not that I'm aware of. So
No more so than usual.
Take it from your friends here at the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, where decorum and propriety are alive and well.
As we talk about as we talk about Guy Pearce grabbing Adrian Brody to recreate Irreversible.
Oh, there's a movie we need to talk about. Anyway,
speaking I don't know if I want to talk about that movie with you, not because I don't think we could handle it. That's a weird movie to talk about.
I mean, that's my daughter bouncing in my seat talking about it. Speaking of rape and bouncing.
Speaking of things you will not be showing your daughter, Monica Bellucci in Irreversible.
Alexis and I will be talking The Bear season 1. She'll be leading that discussion, such as it is this Wednesday. And then Black History Month is upon us, ladies and gentlemen. Our yearly look. Our yearly focus on Black cinema, and we will be starting with Black musicals. It'll be myself and ally of the Black community, Jason Teasley and Shay Tate, and we will be talking The Wiz, which my son says is an atrocity committed to film, and he wants to find the people responsible. Dreamgirls, which my
son is leaning a bit too hard. Anybody who hates The Wiz that much is trying a bit too hard. I don't like The Wiz, but come on.
Dreamgirls, which my girlfriend looked at me, he was like, "This is a snooze," and Purple Rain, which is amazing. And boy, if you want to play a fun drinking game, take a drink every time somebody gets their face, some woman gets or anyone rather gets slapped across the face in Purple Rain, and you will be blackout drunk.
You will need to go to the hospital.
There is no Sunday night, the Source Material podcast is back. Jesse and I, because we're live with this now, he cuts it up into podcasts for his own thing. But right here on the W2M network, we are live and we do the whole recording. We will be doing Dan Slott's She-Hulk collection, issues 1 through 12 from 2004, and then issues 1 through 5, 2005. So we'll be talking about that this Sunday. And then Damn You Hollywood is back at its regular bat time and bat channel. We will be talking Companion, which will be fun. It'll be myself, the aforementioned Alexis Hana, and Robert. Tuesday, Alexis Hana will be doing another Damn You Hollywood, this time for a streaming movie. She'll be talking Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, which the good people at Great claim is fantastic.
It was the best thing I watched in 2024.
And then the last thing, the next triple feature, myself, Dorian Price, and Jason Teasley will be doing our Super Bowl show. We'll be looking at Goldie Hawn's Wildcats, one of my favorite movies as a child because I wasn't parented. Draft Day, starring Kevin Costner of the clips you've seen on TikTok. And She's Got a Great Ass, Al Pacino, in Any Given Sundays.
Not the movie he says that line in, but okay.
It's not, but that's how I identify Al Pacino now. It's Al, She's Got a Great Ass Pacino.
Did you just rewatch Heat or something?
No, but eventually Andrew and I have to talk about it. All right, that's what I got going on. What do you got going on?
Still finding the will to continue. It's out there somewhere. Eventually I might find it. Because, once again, The Brutalist. The cinematic manifestation of the Brutalist architecture style and spirit. It crushed my will. You could use this on a loop in camps. That's all I'm saying. I cover mixed martial arts and professional wrestling over at 411mania.com. I will be covering WWE SmackDown on Friday. UFC has an event in Saudi Arabia starting at 9 a.m. Eastern time on Saturday, so tune in for that. I'll be covering it. There's the Royal Rumble, which I have not yet been asked to cover, but I'm usually on standby for that one.
Run, Robert. Save yourself.
From what?
Nothing. From having to cover the Royal Rumble. I thought it was obvious.
I'd rather do that than the number of things. The Rumble's usually fun, first of all, but it also has a runtime that's less than half of the Brutalist. So
Okay, speed it up there, Chucky.
So okay, I'm done. I will cease making jokes about that movie's runtime for a while until it becomes relevant to make fun of things with a long runtime again. So you can tune in for that. I host the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast on. I record that late Sunday evening / early Monday morning if my insomnia is really bad. And this week is just it's a preview of UFC on ESPN Plus 108. That's the Saudi card. Some brief thoughts on the event the PFL had, because Paul Hughes and Usman Nurmagomedov had a really good fight. And I made fun of the GFL because that is a enterprise that deserves nothing but derision as far as I can tell.
All right.
So,
well,
yeah.
Folks, thank you for joining us here on Triple Feature. I had fun discussing this with my good buddy. Be well.
Good
Be
buddy.
safe. My pal, my buddy, wherever he goes, we go, my buddy. Kid, sister, no, sorry. Be well, be safe, and behave.